Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Jaime, and this is my research argumentative essay. So, my research question is about men's mental health, the stigma around toxic masculinity, and awareness. So, what I had coming into this research was coming up with a question that would I guess answer if men's mental health, I'm sorry, is brought up enough to attention, or like the awareness is raised enough. But so that was my question, if yes or no, if it was. Um, when I first uh, started this, I had a position that I did not think it was raised enough awareness. Next slide. Yeah, so as I said, I was brainstorming a research question, and my position was that I didn't think men's mental health was raising enough awareness, and so I wanted to see if I could, um, I guess, find resources, and of course come up with a secondary resource, which was going to be a survey to see if this could help answer the question that I was looking for my research. And so when I was researching this for the sources for this, I had to find who my target audience was going to be, and I guess it wasn't really like specific as like I guess because men's mental health can be, I feel like it can vary from like different ages, like, so I didn't really have a specific uh age towards men, but most the for the survey that I went with, it was mostly men that was above the age of 18. So I had to first organize, of course, I guess how I was gonna like come up with my essay, and which pieces of evidence and sources would best fit into what paragraphs. So um, there was there was a few sources that I included, but one of them that I want to really talk about was um, for men's mental health. There was higher suicide rates for men than there were for women, according to um, a research journal by Ian Rocket. He stated that um, men were more likely to commit suicide than women were, and it was between the years 2000 and 2014 where the data was organized between the two genders. And although the men's attempts for suicide was much higher, or not attempts, I'm sorry, the rates for suicides was much higher than women. There were different factors that played a role in these suicide rates, because for men were more likely to use more, I guess you could say, brutal techniques in terms of for suicide, such as gun violence, or something that was, I guess, more direct with the suicide. Whereas women who attempted suicide would try things like poisoning themselves, or um, using like blades, cutting themselves, etc. So I guess the main difference between the two rates was that the techniques that were used. And so although, like I said, that the men's rates were higher, um, the the rates would have been probably the same if um, both had the same techniques, if more were if that makes sense. Um, so I thought that was really interesting. I thought that would add something to my argument, and so that was one source that I thought would um, add, I guess, in another uh, piece of like awareness brought up to discussion. And also with my survey, I was able to survey um, seven different men around the same age. I'll get to that in the next slide. But Also, for planning and organizing my first rough draft, I also had to come up with an introduction that would, I guess, state my position on like what I thought about my research question, and I guess that was really difficult for me at first because I wasn't really sure how to approach it, and I wasn't also really sure how to like translate it into my rest of my essay. So moving on to my first draft, I was able to include the survey where I had my seven subjects that I different men that I went up to and asked three questions, and the first question I asked was, would you openly discuss any thoughts or feelings that you're going through at the moment? And the results for that question was one yes and six no's. And for the second question, I asked, do you think there is a uh, toxic masculinity stigma around society today? And with that one, it was seven yeses, and seven yeses all said yes. And then for the third and last question, I asked, do you think men's mental health is raised enough awareness? And with that one, there was two yeses and five nos. So during my first draft, I only included the yes or no responses, but I was told for the not opposing answers, but for the ones that answered yes to the first question and no, and I'm sorry, yeah, for yes to the first question, yes, yes to the first question and yes to the third question. They did follow up their responses with why they thought that. However, I did not include that into my first draft until later, when I received feedback from my classmates and my peers that it would probably benefit my research essay better. But I'll get to that right now in a second, further explaining that. So for my first draft, I included different sources that would, I guess, come from different angles and perspectives and factors about what affects men's mental health. And according to an academic journal by Swenda Marie and Henry O. Lawrence, um, there was another statistics that showed that um, women from the ages of 13 through 18 have the most mental health issues. I'm sorry, mental health issues, and such as depression, anxiety, and stress, whereas majority of men experience those after they turn 18. So it's kind of like a switch statistics. So whereas women, like I said, experience those depression, anxiety, and stress early on during their teenage years, men don't experience that as much. But after they turn 18, the rate for the that goes higher. So how that ties back into my discussion and my research question is because there are different factors that can affect men's mental health, such as like their jobs, men's jobs, and just financial barriers, and also it doesn't have to be financial; it could just be emotional or mental stuff that's going on at home, stuff that's going on with personal relationships, and I guess men have like always. Um, been like taught, to just kind of suck it up and not really talk about their feelings, and they're not encouraged enough. So that's also a reason why the rates are so high in men is because there's so many men out there that like they don't talk about what's going on or what like they don't speak up, and so that kind of creates that just holds in so much emotion and so much stress that eventually men will break. Like that's kind of harsh reality, I guess you can say. But a personal example that I took was from social media. I included that into my essay. I wanted to use real life examples that were happening right now that prove that jobs can be one of the most stressful things. Like, for example, um, according to a Twitter post by BR Football, there was a quote by a soccer player Neymar de Silva Jr., and he was talking about how this next World Cup in 2022, which is one of the biggest soccer international tournaments every 4 years. He was saying that that might be his last one due to the criticism and stress that he deals with from people who watch um, him from all over the world. And it's not just him that, like he's probably the first to spoken up about this, about the real pressure during these tournaments. Whereas there's probably other men, other footballers who, they keep other athletes in general who keep in like stress from their jobs. And because when you're an athlete, you expect them, they're athletes. They should be enjoying what they're doing. There shouldn't ever be any type of stress. But yeah, being an athlete is also in a job, so they deal with criticism, stress, they deal with so much hate and discrimination as well. So that gets into their head, and of course, it just creates it can create depression, anxiety, etc. So after revision done to my first draft, I listened to my peers, and one of my peers had uh, gave me um, advice that I should include the responses, not just the yes or no responses, but the other responses that they had included after saying yes or no to the question that I had asked. So, for example, the ones that said yes, for the one person that said yes in the question where I asked if they would openly talk about their feelings or thoughts that go on inside their head. I asked why. Why do they think that? Why can they? And he said that because he had like a really good support system. So, he had people he could trust, where he could talk to, people who encouraged him, that he can speak up and he can talk about his feelings without, having his emotions thrown back at him. Whereas the other ones who voted no, they didn't really have a great support system. They were just the complete opposite. They had no sort of encouragement from anyone, and they kind of were raised like that. They just were raised to under the stigma that they had to, kind of suck it up, and they should never really have to talk about their feelings. So after going back and revising, I included that into my essay, and I think that helped strengthen the essay because, um, well, it just further elaborates on it's instead of just jotting down the responses for yes or no, it also included from their personal perspective and how, um, because they've experienced stuff like that. These are people that have gone through this, and they had different perspectives from it. And so, after finally gathering all the evidence and sources that I could find and, analyzing them, the answer to my research question was the opposite of what had initially thought in the beginning. So, as I said, when I first started this, I thought men's mental health was not really raising enough awareness. But after, including different sources and even, as I said, I brought up social media, things that's going on today. There's actually, I think there is definitely an awareness there. However, as a society, we lack some sort of encouragement, and so it's not so much that we there's not awareness. It's just we're not really doing as much to prevent it, and so that is another research question for another essay. But for the question that I had, it was different than what I had initially thought in the beginning. So reflecting on my research essay, as I said, it was different than in the end, than what I thought it was going to be. But I was glad that I was able to like learn more about this topic, about this social issue that's going on today, and what we can do to prevent um, men who deal with depression, anxiety, and stress. Also, in my I forgot to mention in the very beginning that I also did a mini proposal that I had included. It was my position stance about where I stand on um, men's mental health awareness and who my target audience is. But yeah, so that's my presentation. Thank you.